The quiet man at the Seal Memorial Wall, until the day a brother found the name. The wall didn't need light. Even in the low gray of pre-dawn, the brass gleamed like it remembered. 57 names, no rank, no unit, just initials and years carved into quiet. Some had wreaths. Others had fingerprints. All had weight. Trainees didn't come here often. Not unless they were ordered to. Ramirez had passed it a dozen times without stopping. He was too busy staying in one piece. Cold water. Missed sleep. Instructors whose silence hit harder than shouting. But that morning he paused. There was a man sitting in the folding chair again. Same chair. Same spot. Back left corner. Old blue parka zipped to the neck. Boots planted flat. Elbows on knees, head down like he was waiting for a decision that wasn't his. Ramirez had seen him before. Only ever at this hour. Always seated. Always still. He thought the guy might have been security. Or a chaplain. Or just someone who'd gotten lost in his own routine. But now, standing behind the chain-link gate, watching the man through the slits, something about it felt rehearsed. He never looked at the names. He just sat there with a cloth in one hand and a bottle of brass polish in the other. The rag was worn thin. Same motion every time. Fold. Wipe. Breathe. Fold again. He never looked up when the bugle played over the bass intercom. Never flinched when the gulls scattered. And never, not once, had Ramirez seen him speak. That morning, for no reason he could explain, Ramirez stood a little longer before heading to the grinder. Instructors would chew him for lateness, but something held him there. He couldn't explain it. The quiet was too complete. The old man too composed, and in the shine of those 57 names, he caught his own reflection. Young, sharp-edged, and proven. The man didn't move, didn't turn. Just wiped once more, then sat back as if he was waiting for someone who hadn't arrived yet. Ramirez came back the next morning. He didn't plan to. Didn't set an alarm. But something in his gut turned over around 0410, and by 0425, he was walking slow along the edge of the barracks lot, hoodie up, boots unlaced, pretending he was out for a warm-up jog. The folding chair was there. So was the man. Same coat, same rag, same position. No one else around. Even the instructors weren't out yet. Ramirez stopped again, just short of the chain link. He didn't want to interrupt. He didn't know if this was some private ritual or old habit. But the air felt stiller. He stepped through the gate slowly, boots clicking once on the concrete, then falling into silence. The man didn't look up. Ramirez cleared his throat lightly. Sir? No answer. Ramirez stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. Those names? He said. They seals? The man folded the cloth, wiped once more. Some, he said, voice low, sanded by time. Ramirez hesitated. You knew them? The man's eyes stayed forward. I remember what they carried. That was it. No explanation. No emotion. Just the words. Ramirez waited. He wasn't sure for what. But something about the man's presence made rushing feel disrespectful. You a seal? He asked. The man didn't answer. Not directly. He just reached down, uncapped the polished bottle, and said, I came back. They didn't. Ramirez swallowed hard. He didn't ask more. Instead, he sat on the concrete 2 feet behind the man. Didn't say a word. Just sat. Cold seeping through his pants, breath fogging in front of him. And when the sun cracked the waterline, spilling soft orange across the edge of the names, the old man stood. He folded the chair, picked up the rag, walked away without looking back. Ramirez watched him go. He stayed seated. It didn't take long for the others to notice. A few days later, after morning PT, Ramirez skipped chow and made his way back to the wall. No one said much. Just the usual noise in the locker room. Sarcasm over shoulder pain. Bets on who'd puke next in drown-proofing. But one voice followed him out. Grant. Big. Loud. From somewhere flat and landlocked, where Navy meant posters in a recruiter's office and patriotism came in Facebook posts. You giving flowers to the names now, Romeo? He called. Ramirez didn't turn. He kept walking. He could already see the top of the folding chair from across the field. And the man, in the same coat, same spot, sleeves rolled, polishing the lower left panel with steady rhythm. Grant's boots crunched behind him. You know that guy's just some base janitor, right? He said. Probably got canned in the 80s. Look at him. No ID, no patch, nothing. Just hangs around like he owns the place. Ramirez slowed. Let it go, man, he said quietly. But Grant didn't. You ever ask him his name? Nah. You just sit there like a puppy hoping for a story. Now they were near the gate. Grant leaned forward, loud enough for the old man to hear. Yo, Chief, you forget where the cafeteria is, or are you just haunting the mystery board again? The old man didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept wiping. Ramirez turned, something sharp rising in his chest. Back off, Grant. Grant raised his eyebrows. Or what? Ramirez stepped forward, not aggressive, but firm. That man's seen more than either of us ever will. Show some damn respect. For a long second, Grant stared at him, then gave a small laugh. All right. Relax. He turned and walked off, muttering. Ramirez stood still. And for the first time, the man at the wall turned his head. His eyes met Ramirez's, pale gray, unreadable. Not surprised, not grateful. Just seen. He gave the smallest nod. Then turned back to the brass. And kept polishing. That night, Ramirez couldn't sleep. The dorm was cold. Bunks creaked with the slow churn of restless bodies. Someone was snoring. Someone else muttered in their dreams. But his eyes stayed on the ceiling, tracking shadows as the hallway light flickered under the door. He kept seeing the man's face. Not his features, just the stillness. The eyes that had no ask in them. No reaction. No need. By 0200, Ramirez got up, laced his boots, and went to the instructor archives. He wasn't supposed to have access, but the system was old. The password hadn't changed in months. And Mason, the night duty instructor, was asleep in his chair. He typed in Memorial Wall Seal Compound Bravo. Just a list came up. Initials. No full names. No ranks. But there was a folder attached. Scanned images. Some photos. Some typed. One had water damage. A group photo in black and white, seals lined up on a rusted pier, eyes squinting into sun. No caption. Just a note at the bottom corner. Recon Unit SDX, bearing op 89. No media clearance. To Mia. He zoomed in. One of the men, second from the right, wore a coat identical to the one at the wall. Same rolled sleeves. Same eyes. No name. Back in the main folder, another scan, a declassified entry from a closed personnel log. Survivor extracted from drift ice. Refused commendation. No official statement given. Individual requested to return to domestic rotation. Transfer logged, then expunged. Ramirez sat back. Nothing confirmed. No hard ID. No record with the man's face or name. But something felt heavier now. Like he'd brushed up against a shadow that didn't want to be touched. He closed the file. Logged out. And on his way back through the hallway, he passed a bulletin board. A yellowing flyer tacked to the corner. A photo of the memorial wall. From years ago. And there, barely visible in the background, the same folding chair. Same position. Same man. He'd been sitting there longer than anyone realized. It was raining the next morning. Not hard, just steady. The kind that soaks without sound. The wall looked darker under the weather, brass dulled by the streaks running down from the top row. The folding chair was there, but empty. Ramirez stood at the gate, unsure whether to go in. Then the man stepped out from behind the equipment shed. No coat today. Just a heavy flannel, sleeves damp, collar up against the wind. In one hand, the cloth. In the other, something small, wrapped in black cord. He didn't speak, just walked past Ramirez and sat down. Ramirez followed. The man began wiping the names like he always did, careful, slow, as if each one was a conversation. But today, halfway through, he paused, held out his left hand. The thing wrapped in cord sat in his palm. Ramirez hesitated, then reached out. It was a coin. Not shiny. Not issued. Worn smooth at the edges, nicked, tarnished. On one side, a faded trident etched by hand, the metal dark with age. On the other, 4 numbers. 1189. No explanation. The man didn't speak. Ramirez looked at him. What does it mean? The man's eyes didn't lift. Time. Place. Wait. That was it. Ramirez turned the coin in his hand. It felt heavy. Not by mass, but by memory. He opened his mouth to ask more. But the man stood. No ritual. No goodbye. Just nodded once, gently, and walked away toward the service buildings, leaving wet footprints on the concrete. Ramirez didn't follow. He sat there in the chair until chow call. The coin never left his hand. The chair was gone the next day. So was the man. It wasn't a surprise exactly. More like a shift in atmosphere, a coldness that didn't come from weather. Ramirez stood at the gate longer than usual, waiting for some sign that he hadn't imagined it all. There was nothing. No folded cloth. No footprints. Just the wall, soaked in early fog, the names dim under gray sky. He walked up anyway. Sat on the bare concrete where the chair used to be. The rain had dried, but the cold stayed. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. Then he saw it. Tucked into the lower groove of the memorial wall's foundation, barely visible unless you knew to look, a strip of dark nylon, wrapped tight around a folded patch of paper. He reached down carefully, unwrapped it. Inside, a piece of a torn map, water-worn, labeled in pencil. No coordinates. No title. Just a red X, scrawled in the corner, and below it, 3 initials in block handwriting. DML. Ramirez stared at it. He didn't understand what it meant. But somehow, it felt like it wasn't for him to understand, only to keep. A note of witness. A memory passed hand to hand, not voice to voice. Behind him, a gull called out once. Sharp. Then silence again. He stayed there for a long time. Not because he thought the man would return, but because absence had a weight of its own now. And for the first time, the names on the wall didn't feel like history. They felt like people who had simply stepped back into the same kind of silence. The folding chair returned 2 days later. No one saw who brought it back. No vehicle. No movement on camera. No duty log entry. It just reappeared. Same spot. Back left corner. Legs aligned exactly against the edge of the brass railing. Ramirez didn't ask questions. He didn't tell anyone either. He just got up at 0410, laced his boots, skipped chow, and made his way through the cold. Fog hung low over the grinder, thin as breath. The path to the wall was damp with old footprints. His, maybe. Maybe not. He carried a small bottle of polish in one hand, a folded microfiber cloth in the other, borrowed from gear storage, never signed out. He hadn't asked permission. He hadn't felt the need. The wall met him the way it always had. Cold, honest, patient. He sat. He didn't try to copy the way the man had moved. There was no script. Just memory. Muscle. Something internal that took over. He started at the lower left corner, where he remembered the hand had stopped. 4th row, 5th name. 1 letter at a time. 1 breath per stroke. The first morning, no one said anything. Second morning, a few passing trainees slowed as they moved toward the mess hall. One instructor, Chief Maddox, lingered at the edge of the fence for a second longer than necessary, then walked on without a word. By the third morning, someone else showed up. New candidate. Shaved head. Nervous posture. Still clinging to civilian instincts. He stood just behind the chain link, watching. Ramirez didn't turn around. He could feel the question waiting in the air, unsaid but heavy. Eventually, some young man spoke. Sir, why do you do this? Ramirez didn't answer at first, just kept polishing. 1 letter, then another. Then he folded the cloth once and set it on his knee. Because someone did it for mine. The recruit didn't respond. He didn't move either. Just stood there, motionless, unsure whether to step forward or back. Ramirez didn't look up. He didn't need to. That night, back in the barracks, he reached under his bunk and slid out a small box he hadn't touched in months. Inside was the last photo he had of his brother. Barely visible in it, a patch on his uniform. Same trident, same initials, DML. Drift top, 19 years ago. No debrief, no remains, just silence. Until now. The mornings became rhythm. Ramirez no longer needed to count them. He just woke up when the sky was still dark, boots already beside the bed, laces tucked in from the night before. His jacket stayed by the door. The cloth sat folded in his front pocket, corners already creased from use. He didn't speak to anyone on the way to the wall. He didn't need to. The path through the grinder, down past the flagpole, across the back lot to the memorial, it was automatic now. Like walking into water. Like sinking on purpose. The chair never moved. It waited. And when he sat, the world around it stilled. Some mornings, the younger candidates hovered at the gate, watching, not sure if they were allowed in. Some instructors gave it a wide berth, not out of fear, just recognition. Some things weren't meant to be interrupted. He never asked them to stay, never asked them to leave. Once, an officer from command came by on inspection and stopped at the fence. Ramirez saw the glint of a rank pin. A pause. Then the man turned and walked away without a word. The wall didn't ask for names, only presence. One morning, the youngest recruit, young man named Ellis, approached slowly, boots light, not wanting to break anything. Ramirez didn't turn. But when Ellis reached the edge of the concrete, he stopped. "What do you see when you look at them?" the young man asked, barely above a whisper. Ramirez breathed in, wiped one last name, then said, "I don't look at them. I look for who's not there." Ellis didn't reply. He sat cross-legged on the cold ground, maybe 30 inches away, close enough to hear, far enough to stay respectful. They didn't speak after that. The sun rose slowly, touching the edge of the brass. The names lit up one by one. The polish caught it just right, not glowing, just quiet. Ramirez sat alone now. The bench didn't feel the same. It was colder, heavier. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe it was the absence of someone who never said goodbye. There was no ceremony, no note, but on the bench's worn slat, just below where the old man always rested his arm, something new had appeared. A small brass plate, screwed in with quiet care. "James R. Maddox, SEAL Team 2. Sat here most mornings, spoke only when it mattered." Ramirez stared at it for a long time, the words sinking deeper than any speech could. Maddox had left more behind in silence than others left in entire careers. In Ramirez's hand, the coin still felt warm. He never knew whether it was given or just forgotten, but now, it didn't matter. It was his to carry. A younger trainee, Ellis, paused near the bench. "You waiting on someone?" he asked. Ramirez didn't answer right away. He looked out over the bay. The fog was rolling in low, just like it used to. "No," he said finally. "Just making sure someone remembers." Ellis didn't get it, not yet, but he nodded respectfully and walked on. Ramirez leaned back, resting his hand where Maddox's had always been. He didn't need to speak. The silence was full.